Good afternoon. I would like to call the meeting of the Assembly Committee on Revenue to order. Will the Secretary please call roll?
Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Cohen. Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Gallant. Assemblyman Gray. Assemblyman Hafen. Assemblywoman Mosca. Assemblyman Wynn. Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblyman Orentlicker. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Chair Backus.
Thank you. I would like to welcome our audience members here in Carson City and down in Las Vegas, as well as those watching or listening over the internet. If you have not done so already, please mute all of your electronic devices. Persons wishing to testify today, please sign in at the table at the door. Before beginning to testify, please present a business card to the committee secretary and state your name clearly for the record. Also, if you're testifying from Las Vegas as well as up here, just make sure that your mic is on when you are testifying so we can hear you. Also, if you have any handouts for the committee, you should have provided 28 copies for the committee, in addition to providing your handout in an electronic format to committee staff. One other thing I'd like to add, if any questions are presented from the committee today, please feel free to go directly to our committee member. You do not have to go through the chair. We have two presentations on the agenda today. First, the Governor's Office of Economic Development will provide us an overview on its works. The second presentation will provide an overview of the Department of Motor Vehicles, and then we will have public comment at the end of our meeting today. I would ask that the presenters from the Governor's Office of Economic Development start your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Tom Burns. I'm the Director of the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and I'm pleased to have a number of my staff members here, and I'll introduce them as they start to contribute. So again, thank you very much. We're here today to present to you at a high level the operations of the Governor's Office of Economic Development, to see how it affects our state's economy, our state's structural dynamics, unique characteristics, its regions, and how the pandemic downturn encouraged us, or maybe even forced us, to look at diversification in a new light. We want to work together with you to stay in front of our state's challenges and threats, and to take advantage of the opportunities that we have at hand. I want to make you, I want to make you aware that our agency's 2-year or 5-year plan has been posted on our website as of today. It's a project of SRI. And it's there for your review. So as we move forward into the director's update, as I said earlier, the pandemic forced us to take a harder look at diversification within the state of Nevada. The precipitous downturn that occurred in southern Nevada put a big wrench in the budget of the state of Nevada and the state as a whole economically. So as we go forward, we're looking forward to being a little more innovative, to having conversations around EV and lithium loop. Innovative Nevada, which means coordination between higher education and capital and connection with Nevada as a whole. All regions of the state have begun to diversify. Southern Nevada has lagged behind Northern Nevada at some level, and that's for a number of reasons, but Northern Nevada has really enjoyed some outstanding times with the diversification. It has come with some pains, I acknowledge that, but certainly the diversification of their revenue and employee base has been significant. As we go forward, we need to acknowledge the constraints we have around workforce, land, and water. I wanted to share with you some of the successes that we've had, though, in recent years. Since 2019, 90 companies have moved to Nevada through incentives in GoEd. In the last 5 years, these companies have provided 13,900 jobs, almost $850 million in annual wages, and $3.8 billion in capital commitments to date. Over the next 10 years, those same companies will produce $1.5 billion in tax revenues for the state of Nevada. As we look here, we have the opportunity to see the return on investment that Nevadans have made over the last 12 years since the inception of GoEd. We've abated about $2.1 billion of taxes, but we've received over $5.1 billion in incremental taxes since the inception of GoEd in 2011. Those, that graph that you saw there illustrates only those companies that have gone through and been abated through the state of Nevada. Additionally, you can see that we've had a significant impact on jobs in the state of Nevada, and how these companies. So we have over 26,000 contracted jobs that have been established in that period of time, and you can see that the hourly wage has grown significantly, including in this last year where abated companies in year-end 2023 have raised their wage to almost $42 an hour. As we go forward and have conversation around economic development and the changing economy, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Director Bob Potts.
Thank you, Director Burns. For the record, Bob Potts. I'm the Deputy Director in the Governor's Office of Economic Development. Thanks so much again, Chair Baucus and the members of the committee for having us here. So I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a different bent here and talk about economic development in Nevada's changing economy. And there has been a lot of changes that have happened over the economy over the past decade, but especially during the pandemic and some of the shifts that have happened. My background is kind of a regional economist, and the work that I've done with GoEd over the past 11 years it's been a remarkable opportunity, to just see all the dynamics and to be part of that adventure that we've got to enjoy. And I think there's spectacular opportunities for us going forward to do some really great things in the state if we're strategic and thinking about how we're going to do that. So as Director Burns had mentioned, we have just released our new, and it came out yesterday on the 15th, is our new strategic plan. It's called Realizing Nevada's Electric, Innovative, and Connected Future. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get there. But I want to give a little background, thinking about the history and how we thought about the data and the stakeholder meetings and everything in an effort to put together this strategic plan. So it made sense for us to go forward and really gave us direction, not only us, but our Regional Development Authority partners. We set it up as what we call a CEDS, a Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which is a framework that's established by the Economic Development Administration. And what that does is it allows us to be able to use it to apply for EDA grants, right? And the great thing is, because it's an umbrella over the entire states, local governments, our regional development authorities, whoever can actually use our CEDS to apply for EDA grants. So it was a way to leverage it, not just beyond a strategic plan for us that kind of lives beyond years and sessions. It's also one that really helps the partners that we work with across the country or across the state, whether it's counties or cities or our regional development authority partners. So I'm going to start with this slide here that's up. You can't really know where you're going unless you know where you are and where you've been and where you want to go forward. So I want to talk about some of the current economic conditions that where we're at right now. Right now, our job counts are about 26,000 above what they were pre-pandemic, but the mix is very different, and that's significant as we start thinking about what's happened in our state and some of the opportunities that lie in front of us. As you all know, we've seen a big hit in 2020 when to keep people safe with a drop of over 300,000 jobs. It really impacted the service-based industries because they were most exposed, tied back to discretionary dollars. But it was, with the pandemic, it was all about customer interface, right, and keeping people safe. It especially hit the South hardest because just leisure and hospitality, if you look at just the direct jobs, it's over almost 29% of all the jobs in Southern Nevada are directly tied to leisure and hospitality. Where in Reno, in the Reno MSA, it's a little over 15%. So big difference, and that that 15% differential, that makes a big difference in how you bounce back, how you deal with these economic downturns. As I mentioned, we're still down, or we're 26,000, a little over 26,000 above the pre-pandemic peak, but we're still down 19,000 in leisure and hospitality, and that's been holding pretty steady. So I don't see that shifting anytime soon. But, when you get your aggregate up to that level, there's something structural. These jobs are going to someplace else. People are doing other things. And as I get into this, I'll talk a little bit where we see that they're moving to and what that means for us going forward. Unemployment rates at 5.2%. That's good, but it's still one of the highest unemployment rates in the United States. Down south, it's at 5.4%. Up here, it's really tight. Some folks ask me, are we going to go into a recession? And there's a lot of questions about that. It is very difficult to have a full-blown recession when you have full employment at the levels that we have right now when the labor market's this tight. So I don't see that happen, at least to a point where it's going to be off the cliff. It's going to get flat. It's going to be, So anyways, we're looking at that, and I lead the economic advisory group in the governor's office, and we're seeing 50 to 60% probability of going into a 0 to 2% GDP recession, so flat, more or less. So anyways, that's kind of an aside here. What I want to do is go to the next slide, which is a map here. This talks about why Nevada always has higher highs and lower lows than the national average in the business cycle, right? Things are good, they're really good. When they're bad, they're tough, okay? What we look at our competing states of Utah, Arizona, and Colorado, and I'm looking at this old Hockman index. And what the Hockman index does is it's an index of diversity. So if all the slices of your pie were the same size, you'd have an index of 100, right? So if we go back and we look at Utah at 95.5%, Arizona at 95.9%, and Colorado at 94.2%, and here we are at 74%, that kind of leaves us uncompetitive, at least on this diversity index, okay? And this is something that we're working towards, but as I'll get into this a little bit, you'll see where we've got a lot of opportunity in front of us that I think we can take advantage of if we're strategic and work together on this. So next slide here, this talks it at the county level, and here's where you can see the difference between Washoe County and Clark County. Washoe County's about 89% on its index, where Clark County's at 64%. If you go to some of the rural counties, you can see they're way, that's because mining just predominates everything in a lot of our rural communities. It's a good thing as long as it's stable and it keeps going there. But if you pulled mining out, it'd be a different picture and that's why, when we work with our regional development authorities, these are the folks that are on the ground. They understand what's going on and how we can assist them with their unique set of needs and requirements. Next slide. This looks really busy. I'm going to try to simplify this really easy. This is what we call location quotients over time. And it's just, all this talks about is the relative concentration we have in workers in an industry as compared to the national average. So in short, any of these bubbles that's above the horizontal lines means we have a higher concentration of workers in that industry than the national average. Anything below, lower concentrations. And on the vertical line, because it's over time, anything to the left of the line means we're growing slower than the nation is, and anything to the right means we're growing faster. So it makes it kind of great. We can put these quadrants in here and say, of our target sectors, the ones that we're working with, what's going on here? So if you look at the tourism, gaming, entertainment, and as an aside, the bubble size refers to the number of jobs, okay? So you look at tourism, gaming, entertainment, it's in the mature side. We're still 2 times larger than the national average, but we're losing ground. And we know this is happening with online gaming. We know Singapore and Macau and Indian gaming and things like that, all right? We knew this is happening. What it means is we need to think forward, and what does the future hold for us, and how do we stay in front of this to keep the economy not only steady, but moving forward. If you look to the right, the upper right one, there's mining. That's a star. It's over 3 times larger and has really grown over the decade, right? So mining is a huge star in our state. And the problem is the bubble's really small. So 15,000, you can't put too much, it's 15,000, doesn't have the magnitude when you look at tourism, gaming, entertainment at almost 400,000 jobs. Okay, what matters here is what's in this lower right-hand side. These are the emerging industries, and you need to think if this was a moving set of bubbles, it would move up and to the right. And so we're starting to tip some of these up into that star territory, especially logistics and operations. And that goes back to what's currently happening in the pandemic, and where there's a whole shift in consumer purchase behaviors to non-store retail sales. And you think about our proximity to California, the 5th largest economy in the world, and things flowing through Nevada, right? And when 50% of what comes in from the Pacific Rim flows through Port of Long Beach, Los Angeles, that's even more so to all points east. This is something we should catch as it goes by. Don't let it skip over top of us. The last thing I want to show on this one here, and then I'll move to the other ones, is on the right-hand side is the earnings. And you can see by this that as we diversify into these other industries, we're also diversifying into higher paying industries. And that's an important, so it's a kind of a double effect, okay? Now, if you go to the next slide, this is Southern Nevada, and it's not a whole lot different than what I expressed with Nevada as a whole, and it shouldn't be. It's 75% of the economy. Okay. Now, if we go down to Northern Nevada on the next slide, you're going to see there's quite a bit of difference here. And this, again, explains kind of visually what's going on in Northern Nevada as compared to Southern Nevada as what's happened with the industry growth over the last decade. We have 4 stars here with logistics operation, aerospace and defense manufacturing, and natural resource technologies, which includes clean energy, water technologies, and agriculture. Okay. So, now, if we go to the next slide, this horizontal bar chart, this is what's happened currently. And this is some of the structural changes that I'm talking about that the pandemic really kicked in and has really set a wind to our back. If you look at this, it's the jobs lost between February 2020 and May of 2020, and then the jobs gained from May of 2020 to December of last year, so a couple months ago, right? If it's red, that's the jobs lost. Blue's the jobs gained. If the blue bar is longer than the red bar, you get a green label on the left-hand side. So the top one says 26,400. That's the number of jobs that were above the pre-pandemic peak. But if you go down through this, you can see what's gaining and what's losing. This is the stuff, this is under the hood stuff that's going on. So there's leisure and hospitality down 19,000 jobs, but transportation, warehousing, and utilities is up 20,600, okay? Construction's up, manufacturing's up, professional and technical services is all up. This sets a tone for how we think about where our opportunities are and how we set our strategies together in our state plan and start thinking about this. Because if you got these non-store retail sales, of course, transportation warehousing goes up. You can move from there, you can go to assembly manufacturing. From there, you can go to advanced manufacturing. So it's kind of this whole things are going to happen. Nevada's in a wonderful place and the opportunities that we have, but how are we strategically going to get the most out of what the opportunities are in front of us? So next slide, this is our strategic plan, and realizing Nevada's electric, innovative, and connected future. Again, it's that 5-year SEDS. There's our mission statement. I'm going to read that for you. Essentially, those bullet points, that's a table of contents that's in the state plan. Like I said, it hasn't been, we're going to do a full media blast. It'll be tied to our annual report in the next week or two. But it is on our website, so please feel free to go there and check it out. It's right at the top off the state plan. Everything under the economic and community assessment, that's the data and all the stakeholder meetings that put together all of what, well, okay, this is what we got, where should we go with this, and how do we plan going forward to establish target industries as we think about our SWOT analysis, challenges that we have there, or, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, challenge and a threat would be water scarcity, for instance, okay? And then our action plan, how we're going to measure and evaluate our progress towards meeting our goals. And then there's a special section in there that we put for leadership plan for inclusive growth. And then my final slide before I turn it over to my colleague is the strategic action steps. So Electric Nevada, that's what Director Burns was referring to when we talk about access and strengthening our EV production supply chain, and solar energy and utility connectivity and any other EV infrastructure. Thinking about not just storage but transportation and all the other things that help with things like national security, right, with some of the processing things. Innovative Nevada. This is to really help and stand up our startup communities, our innovative community and the entrepreneurship. We were recently with Carson and Heise in our office, were awarded a state small business credit initiative, the $113 million over 10 years. Huge opportunity that we're going to try to build off of that. But it's really disjointed. So one of the first things is kind of create a cohesive, unified version for innovation, increase some of the capital access when we think about venture funds for startups, STEM workforce, and water technologies. That's what's going to be in this bucket. And then the Connected Nevada, my friend Chris, my colleague Chris Sanchez, who's down in the south, he's doing a huge amount of work on the infrastructure side of things. Nevada is a spectacular place to land. If you think how we sit in the fold of California, we just don't have enough places for them to land in the urban areas in our state. So need to think about intermodal facilities and infrastructure parks and having them tech ready and think thinking about rail and thinking about roads and those sort of things. So that's sometimes can be kind of the boring stuff, but that's the stuff that matters. A lot of times we'll talk about what matters to companies and incentives and abatements are what we like to talk about, and we're going to talk about here in a minute. But for companies, if you don't have good workforce, if you don't have the right infrastructure, the right permitting capacity, those often come first. So with that, I'm going to close my comments up, and I'm going to turn it over to Director Burns.
Madam Chair, Tom Burns for the record. Currently, I want to talk about the economic tools that we have here in GoEd that we use on an ongoing basis. We first and foremost is the RDAs, that's the Regional Development Authorities. There are 8 regional development authorities throughout the state of Nevada. For those of you in Northern Nevada, you're really familiar with EDON, the great work they've done up here in helping you out. Las Vegas in the Southern Nevada has LVGEA that we use for them. Much of their funding for both of those entities comes from our agency. We also support RDAs throughout the state of Nevada. We encourage them to band together as counties or regional areas for a number of reasons. It allows them to use their resources more efficiently and go forward from there. So great partners of ours. So as we move forward, we talk a lot about innovation and development programs with the Knowledge Fund and the state small business credit initiatives. Bob touched on that briefly in his conversation there. The Apex Accelerator Program, which is a program funded by the federal government, administered by GoEd, and through that we're able to direct Nevadans to enable them to do business with the federal government and the prime contractors of the federal government. Nevada Film Office is kind of what it sounds like. Workforce innovation, as we go forward and we're working with businesses as they're coming into Nevada and they have the conversation, they say, we'd love to move to Nevada, but I don't know if you have the skilled workforce that we need to have in Nevada. Well, we've been able to develop partnerships in Nevada, specifically right now with Gold Stars as they relate to TMCC and Western Nevada Community College, specifically where they've been able to enhance workforce to work at Tesla and out at Trick. But we have those conversations, those programs, and those commitments in place in Southern Nevada as we have conversations with CSN and Nevada State College. So to go forward, WIN would allow us, that company, as we were coming forward, to allow us to set aside money for that training to provide the education and the training for the employees that would be coming in. So we go forward on the next slide, or I guess over to the right, we're going to talk about the Rural Community Block Grant, Nevada Main Street, which allows for physical enhancement of downtown and primarily rural Nevada, and bringing up part of their self-image. As we move on to the next slide, I want to talk to you briefly about GoEd transparency. Our website was rated the #1 website as it respects to transparency among our peers. And so our commitment to you is that we are as transparent as we are legally allowed to be. There are things that are NDAs. They protect the trade secrets of folks that are looking here, and many of them are concerned that if too much was distributed out in the public or out into the media, that their competitors would be able to back into trade secrets that they have and would be hesitant to have conversation with us or consider moving here. But as we move forward and are able to share with you, we are certainly want to be transparent about any financial dealing that we have with any company that comes here to Nevada. We're going to move forward and talk about Nevada tax incentives fundamentals, and I'm going to introduce you to Chelsea, who's going to move forward on that.
Thank you, Director. Chelsea Eastep for the record. I am the Director of Business Development up here in the north. I'm with my colleague Melanie Sheldon. She is the Director down in the south. So I'm going to go over our tax incentive fundamentals with you all today, with a heavy focus on our standard abatement. So moving on to the next slide. Nevada is an incredibly unique state when it comes to our tax incentives. And so there are understandably a lot of misconceptions when it comes to our incentives. So the next 2 slides are meant to help clarify some of those things that we hear often. So Nevada tax incentives are statutory. We are unable to abate anything that is not outlined in those statutes. They are partial abatements. We're not abating full taxes. They're essentially like a rebate. They are required to sunset after a specific time frame, so they don't go on forever. Once they're done, the company then goes on to pay their full taxes. They're only for companies that meet the eligibility standards. Again, those are outlined in the statute, and I will be going over them shortly. They're audited by our amazing Department of Taxation on a 2- and 5-year basis. They are vetted for positive economic impact. And what I mean by that is we do take into account all of the jobs that they're bringing in, the indirect and induced, and all of the jobs that come alongside that, all of the capital investment that would come from that company coming, all of the additional taxes that come along with that, not just from the company, but from the ancillary effects of that. And we make sure that that's going to make a really big positive impact from those taxes that we're abating. And they're also positive in their return on investment. So the next slide, some things that our tax incentives are not. As I mentioned in the last slide, they're not a complete break from taxes, just a partial rebate for a specific period of time. They're not a check written directly to companies. We do not have the ability to give companies money directly. We're also not negotiating deals on the golf course with companies. They don't get to sit down with us and tell us what they want, and then we have to try to get that for them. And they're not abated in perpetuity. So this next slide is our incentive timeline. So this timeline is going to begin after a company has already come to either our office or to one of our regional development authorities, and they let us know that they're interested in our tax abatements and they're ready to move forward with an application. They believe that they'll be in compliance. So we'll get that application submitted to our office, and we will take the necessary time to go through it, make sure it's complete, make sure it meets the statutory requirements. And once we're sure that will happen, so long as they bring that in roughly 60 days before the next board meeting, we'll have their regional development authority representative bring them in front of the GOED board. So long as they are approved, the company will then select a start contract date. That contract date can begin anywhere from their application date, which would be before they were approved, up until a year after they were approved at the board meeting. So they have a pretty good selection of time to pick what's going to work best for their company, because many companies do begin purchasing equipment and things along those lines before they're approved for abatements. And then finally, the Department of Taxation will audit the company every 2 and 5 years after their contract start date. If a company is deemed non-compliant, then the department will begin the recapturing process. So diving a little bit deeper into that, the Department of Taxation of it all, just to reiterate, every 2 and 5 years they are audited from that contract date. Not forever. And should the companies be deemed non-compliant, we will collect those taxes back. As of 2022, the recapture rate is 97%. So we currently only have one company that has yet to return the funds after being deemed non-compliant, and that is because they are unfortunately going through
Bankruptcy.
Thank you so much, Bob. I lost the word, a bankruptcy. And so I know the department is working with them, but unfortunately we have not yet received those funds back. So moving on to our actual abatement incentive package. The NRS is there if you are ever curious to go read it. 90.3% of all abatements used in Nevada are these standard abatements. So within that suite, there are 3 taxes that we abate. The first is the sales and use tax, and that is an abatement, a reduction as low as 2% for that company for 2 years. We have our modified business tax abatement, which is an abatement of roughly half of the 1.378% rate that we have on quarterly wages exceeding $50,000, and that is a duration of 4 years. And finally, we have the personal property tax, and that's an abatement not to exceed 50% for a duration of 10 years. So to go over the eligibility that a company must meet in order to receive that suite of abatements. The number one thing we look at is what they are paying their companies. And these are only full-time employees that we would be able to abate. So those employees have to meet the statewide average hourly wage, which is provided to us by DETR each July. If they don't meet that average hourly wage, we do have a reduced abatement available if they're within 85 to 99% of that wage, but they don't get nearly the suite they would if they met the hourly wage. And if they meet that wage, they either have to meet the applicable employment or capital investment requirements. Those differ depending on if they're in a rural or urban area, so I'll go over that in a separate slide. Other than that, all companies must offer a health insurance plan and cover 65% or more of the premium costs, and that health insurance plan has to be a quality plan. It's not just any bare bones plan. It has to meet the Affordable Care Act standards, and they have to cover 65% or more of that premium cost, and we do find most companies cover more than that. They have to generate more than 50% of the revenue from the project from outside of the state, and that is because we want those companies to bring dollars back into Nevada. They also must maintain the business in Nevada for 5 years, so they can't just get the abatement, take the money, and then peace out. And then they must register pursuant to the laws of the state of Nevada. So our wage requirements, if you thought they were complicated, I'm going to make them more complicated. They're tied to our unemployment rate. So we do this because if a county is in extreme economic duress, we want to encourage businesses to locate in that county. So we define that extreme economic duress at 7%. If a county is above 7%, then we will abate them the full abatement package if they are 85 to 99% of the statewide hourly wage. And that also affects the reduced abatement. That lowers the standards for that as well if that county is above that 7% threshold. Another thing to note about this part of the statute is that we do it on a 12-month moving average because the county rates are not seasonally adjusted, how they come from DETR. So in order to account for the seasonal shifts, we average that out for an entire year. So that gets rid of any of that. And by seasonality, I mean, in the holidays, companies will hire a bunch of employees, right? And then in January, we have really high unemployment rates because all those employees get let go. So this would account for that by averaging it out. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a little out of breath. Employment and capital investment requirements. Okay, so we have two different versions of our standard abatement. We have one for new companies and we have one for expanding companies. So an expanding company doesn't necessarily mean that they've already received an abatement. It just means that they are already existing in Nevada and they would like to expand. A new company is new to Nevada. An expanding company can receive an abatement as a new company, but they can only get an expansion abatement one time. So if we're looking at the eligibility requirements between those two versions, the rural requirements are far less stringent than the urban requirements. So for a new company in a rural area, you would need 10 employees, but not less than 6 if you were just going to qualify for capital investment, because you have to qualify for either employment or capital investment. If you're in an urban area, you need 50 employees, but not less than 10. Or you need the capital investment of $1 million in manufacturing in the rural areas, or $5 million in the urban areas. And then all other establishments are a little bit less than that. Looking at expansions, you need 10% of the current payroll or 6 employees in rural, or you need 10% of the current payroll or 25 employees in urban. So it kind of breaks down that way. Reading the table is probably less confusing than me continuing to explain it, but I'm happy to answer questions on it if you have any. The next slide, these are our additional abatement programs, which I'm sure you all are aware exist. The point of this slide is to show how infrequently they're used for the most part. Aviation and data center are two of our standouts. Those get a little bit more usage. Aviation at 6.1% and data center at 2.5%. The real property recycling abatement is a little bit different because it can be stacked on to the standard abatement if they meet certain criteria for recycling. And that is used 4% of the time in our history. And then, of course, we have the SB1 from 2015, more colloquially known as the $1 billion abatement. That was Faraday. Or the 2014 SB1, the $3.5 billion, or Tesla. Those have both been used 0.4% of the time. So how have tax incentives impacted Nevada? So you've seen this slide before, right? Our return on investment for all abatements is $2.46. So that means for every dollar abated, we got $2.46 back. You might notice that the blue lines, the standard abatements versus the all abatement ROI, is a lot higher in a lot of cases. And that is the truth. Our standard abatements have higher ROIs, and they do very well for our state. Finally, my last slide for you. Just to drive home again, we've brought in 26,510 contracted jobs from these companies, from 423 approved companies. Of those, 68% of them were participating and compliant. And those companies brought in $22.5 billion in capital investment. And I do think it's important to note that Tesla was half of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on, we'd like to discuss transferable tax credits for economic development. And I'm going to ask Haley Owens to discuss that with you.
Thank you, Director Burns, and thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As Director Burns stated, my name is Haley Owens for the record. I'm the research manager for GOED. As Director Burns stated, I'm here to talk to you today about transferable tax credits administered by GOED. So there are four categories of transferable tax credits for which GOED can issue certificates of eligibility. And those are for qualifying film productions, more general economic development transferable credits, as well as transferable credits for qualifying projects with capital investment of at least $1 billion, which Chelsea mentioned was originally intended for Faraday, but we never awarded them tax credits. And then the $3.5 billion investment, which was taken up by Tesla, which I'll get to. But it is worth noting that the transferable tax credits for the $3.5 billion capital investment, those tax credits have sunsetted. The abatement program is still live, but the tax credits are not. So turning to the next slide, this is really just a summary slide of information that I will get into for each of the four programs. So feel free, this kind of more of just a reference slide. I won't go through it here. So I will move on to the next slide. So for all four tax credit programs, it's the same suite of taxes that they can be used against. And so they can each be used against the gaming percentage fee administered by the Gaming Control Board, or the modified business tax, bank branch excise tax, or insurance premium tax, which are each administered by the Department of Taxation. And I think that's all I had to say about that. I feel like there was something else, but that went that. So next I'll dive into each of the tax credit programs. And the first one is for qualifying film productions. And so there are $10 million in credits available under this program in statute per fiscal year. The program itself has no expiration date. When it was first introduced several fiscal years ago, it was started as a pilot program, and the program did have a sunset date. But then in 2015, that sunset date was removed. And it has been a very successful program from our perspective at GOED. We've had a lot of utilization of it, and as the table below shows, we've been able to bring in a lot of dollars to the state. This first big column with the $152.8 million, those are the qualified production expenditures. So those are dollars that have been brought into Nevada and spent on goods and services from Nevada businesses for these productions. And then the next column showing the $22.6 million, those are the total tax credits that have been awarded to date over the last 8 fiscal years. Moving on to tax credits for economic development. In statute, there are $5 million of these tax credits available per fiscal year as of FY21. The program has no expiration date, and the issued credits also do not expire. The executive director of GOED has authority to approve applications for these credits up to $100,000, but anything more than that, the GOED board has to approve. And really, we have not approved any of these credits since 2018. So the utilization has been lower. If we go to the next slide, you can see a table showing approvals by calendar year. Between 2016 and 2018, 7 companies were approved for these credits, up to a total of almost $5 million over those 3 years. But to date, only about $1.5 million have actually been awarded. Those awards they are scheduled out in an agreement with each company, and they have to meet certain benchmarks in the agreement between the company and GOED for the number of jobs and average wage. So there have been companies that have been approved for credits, but then they don't end up getting awarded credits. So next we have the tax credits for projects with capital investment of at least $1 billion. These actually were not utilized until just a couple weeks ago at the late January IFC meeting. $2.1 million in these tax credits were approved for Redwood Materials, for them bringing in 225 projected jobs associated with their tax payment package as well. And these credits are, again, in statute, there's up to $7.6 million available per fiscal year, but only $38 million overall for the life of the program. And this program will expire after fiscal year 2025. So as of July 1, 2025, we will not be able to award any more credits under this program. And then finally, turning to the tax credits for projects with investment of $3.5 billion. As I mentioned, this program has sunsetted as of June 30th, 2022. In statute, there's a statutory cap of $195 million in credits, and $195 million was awarded to Tesla. So this program has sunsetted and it was utilized. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Tom Burns for the record. We're going to finish up our presentation with a comment regarding Tesla and their recent announcement at the end of January. As you know, at the end of January, Tesla announced a commitment of $3.6 billion to build 2 manufacturing facilities at the truck facility in northern Nevada. One is for a semi-truck plant that they're going to produce there, as well as another one for the 46080 battery type lines. That will result in about 3,000 additional jobs in northern Nevada. As stated earlier, that project no longer qualifies for any transferable tax credits, but would be subject to abatements. Meeting of the GOED board will be happening on March the 2nd to approve any abatements moved then. Right now, I'm under NDA as it respects to any specifics around the job around that project, but certainly could discuss information that's in the public domain. And with that, Madam Chair, we're going to conclude our presentation and entertain any questions for you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and thanks for everyone that was involved in putting it on. We will go ahead and start with Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much. This is very fascinating, and I appreciated learning. I caught 2 things when it comes to really equity of you have the extreme economic duress. You also, for rural and suburban, have the employment and capital investment requirements. I'm just wondering when it comes to when businesses come here, how we make sure that certain type of businesses are not just all in certain type of neighborhoods. So something we hear a lot is in certain neighborhoods, it's now warehouses that are taking housing. And I know that could be a local issue, but would love to just hear about how you all consider that when making decisions.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Tom Burns for the record. When a company is brought forward to GOED, we work with the RDAs in showing them sites around whatever location that they're in. And to your point, much of the zoning is a local issue. And so we have to defer at some level to that. Most of the sites that we show them to have already been at some level predetermined by local zoning. So we defer to them. I understand the frustration or the need, but that's where that solution lies.
Next, we will go to Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for the presentation. I just want to say that I know that we are truly moving into the next generation when a presenter says, "Peace out." So I love it. No, and it's not your bad. I think it's really important that we start to see the next generation and their thought process and how we move forward. You know, I'm not a young woman anymore, and there's going to be a day soon where this is not the place for me. And so if we don't have really smart, intelligent young people moving forward and our succession plan, we're not going to go anywhere. So this is wonderful, and I'm impressed and glad that you are here. At the very beginning of your presentation, you talked about two things that caught my attention, and that was workforce, whether or not we are getting businesses here, workforce, infrastructure, and you mentioned intermodal development. I'm going to believe that you were talking about transit-oriented development and things like that. How is your office partnering with or working with local jurisdictions around their zoning issues? I know there's a lot moving on that. To make some movement here. And I speak to that specifically because everybody knows I represent historic West Las Vegas and near North Las Vegas, and we are landlocked. But there is opportunity if people can be sort of creative. And one of the things that I think is really critical is what exactly you're talking about. We want to have density, but we don't need to have cars. So how do we make it so that we get density, workforce, and transportation, and what is you all's role in that?
Madam Assemblywoman Tom Burns, for the record. I'm going to defer at least part of this question to Deputy Chris Sanchez in Southern Nevada. He's been working quite a bit on intermodal transportation and also as it relates to inland ports. And I think that will provide some clarity on much of your question. If at any point we didn't cover something, please come back to me. I'm happy to go over whatever we missed.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Assemblywoman, for the question. You're absolutely right. As we look at the landscape and where we need to be in the future and ensuring that we have considered mobility in all of our planning at every level, one of the things that we're looking at in the Valley is the development of Apex, the development of Gene, and everywhere and all points in between, and making sure that our workforce can travel to where jobs are, can do so effectively and efficiently, and can be there on time. We're also looking at, in the context of intermodal facilities and inland ports, the notion that we do not want to be or continue to be a pass-through state in which all the economic value is realized in other states as other destinations, while we have the negative externalities of air pollution and negative impacts on our roadways and safety. And so we're looking at the entire Southwest ecosystem, especially when it comes to freight movement. We're looking at what the opportunities are. We're looking and partnering with the Port of Long Beach. We've had conversations with the Port of Oakland. We're partnered with the Inland Port Authority in Utah. And we're very actively engaged in looking at how Southern Nevada fits into the entire ecosystem. We are very mindful of the ocean carriers and the challenges that they face because of congestion at the Long Beach port. There is an opportunity there for us. Traditional models around inland ports are not necessarily a great fit for Southern Nevada because we do not produce a lot, and we have a lot of, for instance, trucks traveling out of the market empty. It's important to note that about 70% of all freight traveling through Nevada is either going to or coming from California. So this is an area where we see immense opportunity. We also have about 88 warehouses in Nevada adjacent to rail but that are not utilizing rail. So when we think about our infrastructure, when we think of transportation and transit, we have a lot of opportunity and yet a lot of work to do at all levels of government in Nevada, and we're very much engaged in working with our partners at the local level to address those issues.
Next, we will go to Assemblyman Hafen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation today. I have personally found this to be probably one of the most entertaining and educational presentations so far in this committee. I do want to look at slides 31 and 37 just to make sure that I'm understanding how the tax incentives are currently working. It looks like on page 31 that we've done a total of $2.1 billion in abatements, but then we've generated new taxes from those abatements of $5.1 billion. So overall, GoEd has been very successful. But then when I go to page or slide 37, I'm looking at the film tax or film production credits, and it looks like we've awarded $22.6 million, but we've only received $6.6 million in new taxes, and so I just need clarification. Does that mean the state is actually losing money, losing tax revenue by issuing these film credits, or am I missing something?
That is a good question, and I think it would get down to, one thing that's interesting about these tax credits is that they are transferable. So sometimes the company that earns the credits, they can sell them on a market to a different company that will then use them. Most often it's the gaming percentage fees. And I think it's interesting when we talk about our film productions because we don't have film production abatements. And these aren't when we abate a company, we expect the company to come in and be basically permanent in our communities. These are, short-term productions, and I think what we really focus on with these film productions is the amount of qualified expenditures and the spend that comes into the state. I hope that at least partially answers the question.
Can you also identify yourself for the
Oh,
minutes?
apologies. Yes, Haley Owens for the record.
Follow up.
Madam Chair, this is, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair, this is Chris Sanchez for the record, Deputy Director, Southern Nevada. Assemblyman Hafen, I also wanted to add a couple of notes on your question. So we do look at the totality of the impact of the productions in Nevada, both the crew that's employed as well as the economic impact. But it is worth noting that in the field of film tax credits, Nevada is really kind of in the bleachers. We are not competitive in this area. It's something that GoEd is looking at right now. If you take a state like Georgia, for instance, they have tax credits of upwards of about last year, almost $1 billion uncapped, which I'm not suggesting that's anything that Nevada should consider doing. But with respect to the film industry, we are continually getting a lot of inquiries from large production studios as well as streamers. There is a demand here. It's just that we don't have the right product. And so we're looking at this industry very, very closely right now. We're looking at how we can catalyze that industry, spur investment in capital investment in productions, physical production studios here in the state, as well as grow the workforce more consistently. And so we're looking at these tax credits. We're looking at how they can be structured better, and how that the overall economic impact can be greater in this policy.
And I appreciate that it's being looked at, and I just want to put on the record that it appears that historically, over the last few years, we've actually lost money on these. And so if this is going to be a net loss, I think that there are some other benefits when it comes to tourism and other things that aren't being reflected here. But I just want to make sure that Nevadans, the citizens here, are getting the best bang for their buck if we are going to continue with certain abatements, like we saw on slide 31, where overall we're doing a great job. We're having a great return on our investment. It's just this one slide probably doesn't paint the picture perfectly. And so hopefully in the future, we can have further conversations about how to make sure that if this program continues, that it is slightly more successful or a little bit more transparent in where the success is coming from.
If I can, Madam Chair, Tom Burns for the record, if I can provide some clarification, Assemblyman, I believe what this shows is that we received net new, that meaning clearly the taxes abated exceeded the taxes received, but the $6.5 million is net to the state of Nevada after consideration of abatements.
And then also, Director Burns, I also wanted to just kind of follow up because I think on slide 37 as well I just wanted to understand that under economic impact, that from these incentives, that it's also having a $340 million impact that spreads to other industries in our state that may also be taxpayers.
Yes, Haley Owens for the record. I'd say thank you for pointing that out because it is, we have these qualified production expenditures and then those businesses, they're paying taxes, on those goods and services that they're selling. So there are those direct, indirect, and the induced effects that really ripple through the wider economy.
And did you state your name for the record?
Haley Owens for the record. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll go to Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. The first one is on the standard abatement eligibilities. It says the weighted average wage for all employees must meet the statewide average hourly wage. What do you mean by weighted average wage for all employees? Like, how do you weigh it? And also, when you're talking about all employees, is that everyone from making minimum wage or higher all the way up through the owner of the company?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Chelsea Eastup for the record. That's an excellent question. So it is all full-time employees. We do not abate part-time employees. And yes, that would include all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. So what weighted means is we don't just take all of the wages, add them together, and divide by the total. We multiply it by the number of employees in that category. So they give us an average wage for all of the bottom line employees, right? And so if they're making $14 an hour, and there's 2,000 employees, we would multiply that together, and we do that all the way down the line. And then we sum that up and then divide that by the total number of employees. So it actually gives us a much more measured average wage that's a lot more accurate, and it's not going to be skewed by the people at the top that way. Does that clarify your question?
That answers my question. It was, if you have 2,000 employees making $14 an hour, do you take $14 an hour and then the owner's making $1.5 million? But yes, you answered that perfectly. Thank you.
Of course.
My second question is, I was under the impression that the purpose of the abatements was to recruit new businesses. But looking in the statutes, looking at the requirements, I'm not seeing recruiting new businesses as part of the statutory requirements. And then earlier you mentioned that there are expansion businesses and new businesses. So if you could, I guess, clarify for me if these abatements are available for any businesses in Nevada if they are expanding, or if the purpose of this is to bring in new businesses from out of the state in order to expand and bring in business.
Chelsea Eastup for the record. Thank you again, Vice Chair. So the purpose is really more aligned with economic diversification. So we don't abate tourism-based or I think mining. There's a few other entertainment. Those sorts of industries are not eligible for the abatements. So we're looking to help any business that is able to diversify our economic base. So a business that's already existing here, that's in manufacturing, that would like to expand and that would help diversify our base, we would certainly like to help them do so.
Okay, so my probably natural follow-up to this would be, so then if a manufacturing entity comes in and gets an abatement for a certain number of years, and then at the end of those years expands on their property, will they get another abatement and then they continue to do that where they sort of have abatements that are layering on, or is there some stoppage level?
There is a stoppage level. Again, Chelsea Eastup for the record. They can receive only one expansion abatement after getting a new abatement. And if they're already an existing company, they can't get a new and then an existing. It just would be an expansion.
Sure. Next, we'll go to Assemblyman Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two relatively quick questions, I hope. The first is regarding, when you brought up slide 12, you don't need to bring it up again now, but the little purple bubble with aerospace and defense. Some years ago, UNR and the state was really looking hard at UAVs, and we had companies like Drone America coming in, and then the university established their UAV Center of Excellence. And I thought that was going to take off and have much more of an impact. And I'm wondering why we haven't seen as much of an impact, because your office was, intimately involved in that as well. I'm just wondering why we haven't seen as much of an impact on that.
So this is Bob Potts for the record. And I was part of all those conversations back in the day, and I just don't think the industry took off at the scale and the rate that they thought it was going to. And I don't think it's unique just to Nevada. I think it's across the country. Now, does that mean that things aren't happening and things aren't going? There's still a lot of activity that's going on, and we continue to support what's going on up at UNR and the different in the drone space.
Okay, and then question number two, if I can still do that, ma'am. With regard to abatements, I like abatements. I mean, I like the way they attract companies and businesses to Nevada. I love the diversification we've got going on. But has anybody studied how it's affecting the counties? I mean, when there's abatements, I mean, it affects everything within that county. School districts, I mean, we've got, even in Lyon County, because of what's going on at Trick, we've got more students. Fire districts, I'm really concerned about, I mean, because they have to acquire new equipment and more people. So I'm just wondering if anybody's studied that, and if there's a way going forward that we can structure these so maybe there's partial abatements, excluding the districts that are going to get hit really hard.
Assemblyman Melanie Sheldon, for the record, thank you for the question. We actually work very closely with our municipal partners when we're looking at site selection for a company. So if a company is looking to locate somewhere, not only will we bring our RDA partners on board, we'll bring our municipal partners on board. We'll also bring utility providers as well. We will have water representatives or local municipal water representatives at the table to understand whether this project can be accommodated. So we do not move forward on a project on our side, on locating a project from our side without having that input in the beginning or knowing whether that municipal or that municipality can accommodate that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Madam Chair, this is...
Go ahead, sir.
Madam Chair, Chris Sanchez, Deputy Director from Southern Nevada. One of the hazards of not being physically in the room. I just wanted to add to the Assemblyman's question with regard to the drone space. So we transitioned the Nevada Institute of Autonomous Systems to the new Nevada Autonomous in partnership with the University of Nevada, Reno. It's now part of the Nevada Center for Advanced Research. We did that because if we looked at the other testing sites across the nation, they were part of university systems. And the in-car system, the UNR in-car entity has performed exceptionally well, and we thought that would be a perfect marriage, if you will. The state still has the test site designation, which expires at the end of October of this year. It is a federal designation. We are one of 7 in the nation. We are waiting to hear what the process will be from the FAA if they're going to continue that designation, that program specifically. But we are seeing an uptick in activity. The last report from the folks over at Nevada Autonomous and by extension UNR was that the phone is ringing. There's a lot of companies looking to test, and they are looking at Nevada because of our unique capability to do so. And so we still believe that there is opportunity in this space. And as my colleague and friend Director Potts had mentioned, we are impacted by the FAA and their ability to move quickly in this space to allow for greater testing with higher payloads and beyond visual line of sight. But it is an industry that still represents growth for Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go on to Assemblyman Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have really amazing interest in these numbers, and I know we spent a lot of times on page 37, and no one has addressed it. So I'm going to go back to page 37 and wonder why that zero are there. What happened in 2018? Like, is that the year no movies were made, or we had a pandemic that no one knew about?
Assemblyman, thank you very much for the question. Melanie Sheldon for the record. We actually do not have a Film Office representative here at the moment. Kim Spurgeon, our director who manages the incentives at the Film Office, probably should have been here to answer this question for you. So we will absolutely get that information as to why there was some sort of blackout in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
It's a great question.
Mike's not on. Okay, so my other question, I was looking at slide 12 and 13, and I'm very, very curious about the increase, and it has a good chunk too. It's the second largest category in terms of number, in terms of jobs, which is the health and medical services, right? But it's still, from a percent change, it's still pretty small, even though the quantity seems to be the second biggest group, behind tourism and gaming. If anyone can kind of enlighten me in terms of any strategies that we have in this space in health and medical services. We know that nationally in Nevada, we're in a medical crisis across the country, and we all know that. Just kind of want to hear your thoughts. Maybe Director Burns can give us those thinking in terms of strategies and focus, and maybe there's something kind of in the pipeline that we're looking at to kind of really change this narrative.
So, Tom Burns for the record. Mr. Assemblyman, certainly we would entertain opportunities in the work diversification space for this. But as you think about, as we bring, I personally think that the challenge is not so much in the attracting of the new businesses to Nevada as the education of the folks that we have here and bringing those. So I'll let Deputy Commissioner Director Potts address that differently. But I don't mean to say it's not our job, because it is a concern. I'm a citizen of the state of Nevada too. Much of it doesn't fall under our purview, I guess I would argue.
So please repeat your question one more time so I can make sure I understand what you're talking about. The growth rate isn't as great for healthcare, and you're wondering how we're addressing that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, if there are strategies, because I was just looking at, the list of priorities that you have, and I just didn't see any types of mention in terms of the vision for what you're looking to do in terms of this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the record, Bob Potts, healthcare is one of our target sectors, right? Most of the time when we think about economic development in target sectors, we're thinking about industries where most of the goods and services you sell are sold outside the region, right? So money flows back in. Right? That lifts the tide for everybody. Healthcare is not one of those, but if you don't have good healthcare, you can't bring in the other ones. So it's critically important that we build into that narrative what we're doing in the healthcare space. That's why we have on staff as a healthcare industry specialist that is working diligently in helping build out that ecosystem. But I would argue at some level, we need to think about occupational licensing. There's a whole bunch of other things like Director Burns had talked about that are outside the purview of GoEd that makes it difficult for us to move the train forward on this conversation. So just like so many other things, there's no way we can take advantage of the opportunities that are in our state if we don't have everybody operating in the same wavelength. So it's just something to bring forward and to think about, because I think there's huge opportunity with reciprocal licensing and things like that. So
thank you for those answers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Somewhat following up on that last conversation is how important is quality of life to the companies that you're dealing with trying to bring to Nevada, and what are the issues that they're saying are important for them as far as what they want to see for their employees?
So every year, Site Selection Magazine, which is a cooperative of site selection consultants that we work with all the time, they do a survey of all the consultants that they work with, and all the time you have this top 10 list, and at the top is always workforce development and education, what we have in that space. HR is the most important thing when it comes to companies, what they're thinking about as far as expansion and relocation decisions. And I think I should have said Bob Potts, so you know who's talking here. Sorry about that. So anyway. But also on that list are ease of doing business. What's your tax climate look like? What do you have for land? What are your power costs? Those are always on the list. But quality of life, excuse me, quality of life always is in there too, along with the abatements. If you ask the staff what they're interested in, quality of life matters. If you took it to companies, they're going to have a little different list in here, but quality of life is always in the top 10 of decisions that are being made by these companies as they're thinking about this. So.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to make sure I'm clear. On 13 and 14, the bubbles are the direct jobs.
That would be correct. Bob Potts again.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. We will go on to Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I have numerous questions, but I've had the opportunity to meet with you in the past, and so I more than likely will again. I will, I think, just cut it down to just three. The first will be kind of a follow-up to both the last question and then three others. The conversations around housing in particular are greatly impacting the area I am fortunate enough to serve, which is the Sparks area. Are there conversations at the board level or with the groups or with the companies coming in about the heavy lift that is actually happening across county lines? Because when I looked at slide 11, it appears that industry diversity index, Story County is at 0.9%. And I want to make sure this is clear. I am not trying to hit Story County at all. However, there are large manufacturing areas in Story County where the individuals live in Washoe County. Is that part of the discussion with the board and the companies when they are coming in?
Assemblywoman, thank you for the question. Melanie Sheldon for the record. While I can't give a lot of detail on a certain large project occurring, I can guarantee that those discussions are occurring around housing.
A few more follow-ups, if I may, Chair.
Sure.
I promise.
If you can do like two more, that'd be great.
Oh, okay. Of course. The other one has to do with, you made it very clear that this is the expectation to be high-paying jobs. Are there discussions when those, unfortunately, these companies do also appear on the list that we get from the Nevada Medicaid recipients employed by employers with 50 or more? We have there are companies that are on this list that are receiving GoEd help. What does the board do about that? Or what is the way that we're able to help our employees that are, in fact, getting Medicare, or Medicaid, excuse me, and yet that company is also getting a break or abatement?
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Chelsea Eastep for the record, and I completely understand where this question is coming from. The unfortunate reality for us is we only abate those full-time jobs, right? That doesn't mean that the company isn't allowed to hire seasonal workers or part-time workers, and if they aren't above a certain threshold, I believe it was 30 hours a week, they aren't even able to offer their employees health insurance. And so those employees are having to go through other means to get their health insurance. Another thing that kind of helped give me perspective on this, because I also did some research on it, because it requires that. And I found that the state of Nevada is also very high up on that list. And we offer really inexpensive health insurance compared to what most other companies receive. So it just gave me some perspective on that too. It's not something we like to see, obviously. But that's likely the reason, is they just can't even offer it to the people who are part-time or seasonal. And there's also a lot of reasons to be on Medicaid. It's not just that the low wage. There could be other circumstances that get them there.
Thank you. So just to make sure, there are discussions though around it, and there is an awareness from the GoEd board and industry about this happening with, and I'm not going to say any specific companies, but they are present, as are every single school district. I mean, that's the other realities.
Yes, those discussions have been had.
Great. And my last question, in the interest of time, I greatly appreciate the information that is found on, basically, it's about from pages 26 to 30, which starts to list in a general sense the different abatements. But is there a way to get specifics of what those abatements could be, how long those abatements are, without getting into confidentiality issues, which I realize are part of these agreements as well? But like if you take a look on page 26, 90.3% of all these abatements, well, where are the other 9% coming from? So is there a way to get like a list of those abatements, how long they're able to be utilized, and how many companies are actually using them?
Chelsea Eastup for the record. Thank you, Assemblywoman, for your question. Yes, we absolutely can get you a list. We actually just put out our biennial report, which lists every single abatement we ever have given and the audit results for those companies, the actual numbers, the comparison to what they had not promised, but estimated for employment and wages. I certainly can get you the requirements for the other abatements if you're interested in seeing them in the most layman's terms possible. It's also on our website, but
Oh, it's on the website?
I can certainly send it directly to you.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Chair. And thank you for your patience as well. I'm more than likely will be calling you guys for some more. But thank you, Chair, for the time.
Thank you so much. I was going to actually ask you guys that as a follow-up. If you don't mind sending it to our committee secretary, I think a lot of us on this committee would be interested to see it. I try to get through your guys' reports. Your website is very transparent and has lots and lots and lots of reports on there. So it'd be easier if you could send that to us. And I didn't know if that report on your biennial report also has like what is still like available on some of those abatements that have the sunsets, if that report kind of shows that, so we know what's been used and what may still be available.
Thank you, Chelsea Eastup for the record. Are you asking for specific companies how much they have left to use, or just in general what abatements are available going forward?
Ideally both, if we could, just to see what we're looking at going in the future with those companies that have agreed to abatements, which I kind of may have assumed that was going to be in the biennial report, but maybe I misunderstood that. And
it is in a way. So it does list each
Name for the
abatement.
record,
I'm
please.
so sorry, Chelsea Eastup for the record. It does show each company and what they've been abated, and so you could do the math on what they have left. Most of the abatements in there, especially 2010 to 2018. Yeah, they're already expired. Most of what's in that report is already done. But if you were interested in getting a specific list of companies and what they have left on a timeline, I'm sure that's something I could put together for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of the hard work that went into this presentation today. It was very thorough. Thank you for answering our questions. And with that, you guys can be released, unless you have one more comment, Director Burns?
Madam Chair, Kim from our film office in Southern Nevada was able to make and probably clarify Assemblyman Gwynn's astute question. Kim?
Hello, Kim Spurgeon, Tax Incentive Manager for the Nevada Film Office. For the record, Assemblyman Nguyen, to answer your question on why there was no funds awarded during 2018, the program went without funding from the years 2015 to 2017, and the numbers reported on that page are the final audited numbers. So there is a delay in terms of when the production filmed and when we get their final numbers in. So all the productions that we missed in 2015 to 2017 as a result of not having funding are reflected in that year in 2018.
Quick follow-up, Chair, on that answer. So is it my understanding that the number that you see there for 15, 16, and 17 fiscal year were awarded in previous funding time?
That was for the, I apologize, Kim Spurgeon for the record. Those were awarded in conjunction with productions that filmed in previous years.
I see. Okay.
Under previous funding, the program had funding in 2014 of 10 million, after SB1 left us with 10 million. And those numbers are from the productions that filmed during that time frame as the audits came in.
And then the fund came back into play starting fiscal year 19.
Kim Spurgeon for the record. The funding actually came into play in start of fiscal year 2017, July 1st. And the reason we did not see any audits in 2018 is that they had not completed their audits yet. They had completed their filming, but not their audits. And we started to see the audits for those filmed in 2017, starting in 2019.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Director Byrne. That was like lightning fast on a follow-up. That's my fastest follow-up ever. So thank you. Thank you, Director, for your answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all. Our next, second item on the agenda today is a presentation by the Department of Motor Vehicles. I would ask the presenters from the department to make their way up to the table. Welcome, Director Butler, and your team that is present today. Begin when you're ready.
Okay, I guess it's good evening at this point. Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, I'm Julie Butler, Director of the Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles. With me today, to my right, is Michael Xavier, Administrator of our Motor Carrier Division, and to his right is Sean Sever, our Legislative Liaison. Today we'll be providing you with a brief overview of the department's operations, and we'll end with a focus on the governmental services tax and fuel taxes. Slide, please. The department recently underwent a strategic planning exercise to inform our decisions over the next 5 years, out of which came 6 goals, which will be shown on slide 4. Our vision is to be a national leader in DMV services, and our mission is to provide efficient motor vehicle solutions for the identification, licensure, and protection of all we serve. The DMV is one of the larger agencies in the executive branch with 1,289 authorized employees. We collect over $1.7 billion in revenue annually from roughly 4.6 million financial transactions. Most transactions require an appointment in our Las Vegas and Reno offices. We are encouraging our customers to go online first to see if their transactions can be completed before coming to an office. We have 18 offices statewide. Our services are supplemented by 8 county assessors, 4 AAA offices, and 46 kiosk locations, which are mostly in the Las Vegas and Reno areas, but some of them are sprinkled throughout our rural locations because of the geographic distances that those Nevadans must travel. Our goals are centered around providing easy and efficient services to our customers and our staff while retaining and attracting the talent that we need to make these goals a reality. The department has a dedicated team of experienced professionals on its executive leadership team, shown on the next 2 slides. And moving on to slide 7, the DMV is funded primarily through highway fund appropriations and the fees that it collects on various services such as driver's licenses, vehicle registrations, and titles. We receive a very small general fund appropriation each fiscal year for the administration of the automatic voter registration program. Again, we collect in excess of $1 billion in revenue each year per statute. Highway fund appropriations for the department's operations must stay under 22% of the funds collected and distributed to the highway fund, excluding fuel tax revenue. Currently, that cap is at 27% to account for the DMV transformation effort, which is our IT and business modernization program. Slide 8 shows our department's funding breakdown for our 24-25 budget. Highway funds and fees collectively make up about 75% of the budget for fiscal year 24 and 76% for fiscal year 25. The department forecasts revenues in December of even-numbered years and in March of odd-numbered years. These revenue forecasts are used by policymakers to help balance the governor's recommended budget and later to balance the overall state budget that the legislature approves. Revenues dipped during the pandemic but have since come back strong. DMV is forecasting average overall revenue growth per fiscal years 23, 24, and 25 of 2.32% and average highway fund revenue growth per year of 2.27%. We'll continue to monitor revenues throughout the budget build and refine our projections based upon current trends. So now let's talk about where that money is distributed. About 38% of those revenues go to counties and school districts, and 36% goes to the highway fund. The remainder goes to support the department's operations and to the general fund. And here's where I hope I don't lose you because it gets kind of into the weeds, but here we go. We'll give it a try. Okay, of the annual revenues that the department collects, approximately 84% of it is tax revenue. Chief among these are fuel taxes, sales taxes, and governmental services taxes. The DMV partners with licensed fuel suppliers to collect and distribute state and county fuel taxes. We'll talk more about fuel taxes in just a bit. The governmental services tax is a property tax on vehicles assessed for the privilege of operating a motor vehicle on the highways. The governmental services tax dates back to the 1960s when it was known as the vehicle privilege tax, the proceeds of which were distributed to local governments and school districts in lieu of county-specific vehicle property taxes. 2001, the legislature changed it to the governmental services tax. Vehicle valuation is based on 35% of the manufacturer's suggested retail price without accessories. From there, the tax is assessed at 4 cents per $1 of vehicle valuation added to the depreciated value of the vehicle. 2 counties, Clark and Churchill, charge an additional property tax on registered vehicles in those counties called the Supplemental Government Services Tax for transportation-related projects in those counties. It's an additional 1 cent per dollar of vehicle valuation added to the depreciated value of the vehicle. GST is collected with new vehicle registrations and annual registration renewals via mail, internet, and in-person appointments. In September 2009, the depreciation schedule for the governmental services tax changed to generate additional revenue. The additional revenue was dedicated to the state general fund in FY 2010. Since then, various percentages have been split between the general fund and the highway fund. Per statute, the DMV keeps a 6% commission on governmental services tax and supplemental GST for collecting and distributing the taxes, and 1% of the taxes are collected by county assessors who get to keep the remaining 5%. After the commission is removed from the collected GST, the remainder is allocated according to a depreciation schedule set in statute based upon the vehicle's age and weight. 25% of it goes to the state general fund, 75% goes to the state highway fund, and the remainder goes to the state education fund for county school debt and school operating expenses, and to county general funds based on the number of vehicles registered in each county and percentages supplied by the Department of Taxation. Now I'll turn it over to Michael Xavier, Administrator of our Motor Carrier Division, to address fuel taxes.
Good evening. For the record, Michael Xavier, Administrator for the Motor Carrier Division. Just a quick overview on fuel taxes, applicable NRSs you can see on the slide there. The major takeaway from that, NRS 365 being motor fuels, is gasoline and its derivatives, and NRS 366 is special fuels, mainly being diesel and its derivatives. So just to make that differentiation there. The point of taxation in the state of Nevada is at the fuel supplier. We collect directly from licensed fuel suppliers on a monthly basis, and that cost is transferred down to the consumer via the retail stores from the fuel suppliers. Like I said, they're licensed fuel suppliers that have to report to us on a monthly basis, and we collect via them on the fuel supply. Next slide. There's our current fuel tax rates. On the next slide, it will say how those broken up, but one thing I want to point out there where it says 4 counties, that's an amount of just over 5 cents that we collect on behalf of the counties, and they go out based off numbers from the state demographer on population as well as road miles within those counties. Next slide. So the 17.65 cents is broken up into two pieces. Major takeaway from there is one is for the maintenance and construction of highways, and the direct 5 cents is specifically for new highway construction. There's also refunds that come out of there based off of what they report on a monthly basis, but that's how that 17.65 is calculated outside the 5.35 cents. The next slide shows the amount of gallons collected in FY22, just shy of 1.2 billion gallons. That equates out to just shy of $600 million. That includes Clark County PPI and Washoe County CPI and PPI indexed on fuel taxes. The last slide is special fuel. Again, major function of that one is collecting taxes against diesel as well as some other fuels, but the major piece from that is diesel. And after that, I will turn it back to Director Butler.
So thanks for your attention this evening. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions? Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Oops. Thank you so much for the presentation. Short, sweet, and to the point, and a little bit different from the one you gave in growth and infrastructure earlier, I think, or I'm just catching some different things. So the alphabet soup, PPI, CPI.
Michael Xavier for the record. PPI, the Producer Price Index, and the CPI, the Consumer Price Index.
It's late. Thank you very much. A follow-up, Chair? Go ahead. Can you just sort of, for the edification of all of us, kind of explain how this money is dispersed? I think there's a red book that's used, and you go by population, and then the metropolitan planning organizations get these dollars, and it's dispersed to the municipalities and cities, just so that people know how their cities and counties are receiving this money and what it can be used for.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. I'm going to call on Angela Smith-Lamb, who's the administrator of our Administrative Services Division, and her division handles the distributions statewide.
Good evening. For the record, Angela Smith, DMV. For the GST, that's based on, like Director Butler said, it's dispersed based on the county in which the vehicle's registered, so we distribute based on that statistic. For the fuel, it's the same. Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we disperse the taxes to the counties in which the fuel is purchased or the taxes are collected.
Thank you. Next, Assemblywoman Anderson.
Sorry, I'm just getting used to going last. I was like, hey. Thank you, Chair. So looking at slide number 7, it looks like the DMV collects $1.7 billion. Wonderful. Quick question, though. What is your current vacancy rate? And how much of that 1.7, I mean, actually, I'm not asking this correctly. How much of the 1.7 billion is helping you fill the positions that are helping us actually have a DMV? And then also, what is your vacancy rate at this time, if you have that percentage?
Julie Butler, again for the record. Currently, our overall vacancy rate department-wide is about 10%, but in some divisions, it's as high as 30%. In our Central Services and Records Division, that's the division that does our back office operations. Currently, in our IT division, it's around 30%. And in our Field Services Division, it's also around 10%. How much of that, so for the, you want to know how much our overall operating budget is? Or
due to these, I guess, empty positions, is that money then is able to go into other areas of your budget, or are you still, I guess that's what I'm asking.
Julie Butler for the record. So what happens if we hold those positions vacant for for a length of time, what happens is the governor's finance office assumes that we don't need those positions, and so they are cut. And so we budget as if we're going to fill those positions because that is our goal, is to fill the positions. But, you know, if we're able, and I see their point, you know, I mean, if you're able to continue to conduct business for a certain length of time, and then you have to go back and justify why you need the positions. The situation we find ourselves in right now is we're actively trying to recruit, and we're not successful in getting candidates, both for our permanent positions. And so then the question becomes, well, why don't you get temps? Well, great if I knew where to find them, because they're not willing to come on board either for the salaries that we offer. And I will point out that DMV employees are the lowest paid in the state government. We compete actively against other division or departments within the executive branch for talent, and a lot of them leave to go to other state agencies for more money, and you can't blame them. Somebody mentioned in the GOED hearing about the percentage of state employees that are on Medicaid. DMV employees make up a large percentage of those individuals. So it is something that we're cognizant of, and so what we're doing to try to, you know, we're trying to make it a great workplace environment to work. We're trying to offer flexible schedules, you know, remote opportunities where it makes sense to do so in an effort to attract a talented workforce, but it's an uphill battle.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. We'll go to Assemblyman Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question is more about technology and the way we collect these fees. I know that as DMV is going through the modernization and, for example, things like going from, you know, walking appointment to online appointments and things like that, the shift going over to doing more things online has kind of either increased efficiency as well as a easier way to kind of collect your revenue in that sense. And I guess my thoughts around that is just that I'm wondering if there will be more services added on in the future in terms of the online usage for the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman. It's a very good question. We do currently offer a variety of services online, but we are looking to expand that with our DMV transformation effort in an effort to move most, if not all, of our services online over the next 3 years. So that is as a result of a $115 million project that was approved by the 2021 legislature to do business and IT modernization over this span. And so we are actively getting into the most technical and difficult portion of the project in these coming 2 fiscal years, and that comes to actually moving the data. But we are seeing some early wins in moving some additional services online, and we will continue to do so throughout the duration of the project.
Just a quick follow-up, Chair. Has it been helping you in terms of increasing your in-collection effort with having more online processes? And if you don't have data on yet, that's fine. I'm just curious on in terms of the shift in the trend and how it's affecting your overall budget.
Julie Butler again for the record. Thank you again for the question. The short answer to your question is no, and that is because currently we are collecting our $1.7 billion in revenue and tracking that on Excel spreadsheets. Hence the reason that we need to modernize. A big portion of our modernization effort is a financial management system, which is actively in configuration right now as part of our overall transformation effort.
I'll go to Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong for a follow-up.
thank you for that. But I have a concern. I'm going to guess that you cannot buy software off the shelf for what you are doing, for your work. And I'm going to guess that whatever you purchase, part of this 100 and something million dollars, is going to require that you have experts in-house to help you maintain, to help you make adjustments, to help you make it your own. So if you can't keep people in IT and you've got a 10%, you have IT 30% down in IT, how is this going to work? If you don't have your own experts in-house to help you manage and move data and make adjustments to tables as you are asked to do more work, how is this going to work? Is this going to just be a behemoth that sits there and doesn't meet its full potential? And how are you all going to keep and retain people? And where can we be of assistance in that?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. That's an excellent question. First, to address the software. So we are purchasing. It's a lot of different software products that will work together in our effort to move the data and the services to the cloud. So the platform that we have chosen as a software as a service platform is called Salesforce. It's used by companies worldwide in providing an online storefront, which is the department's vision, is that DMV services ought to be as simple as the online shopping cart experience, where you add whatever service you want to the cart and check out. And that's the vision that we're going for, and Salesforce will facilitate that. Simultaneously, we're looking to move our data to the cloud, likely Amazon Web Services. There's more discovery around that, but that's likely where we're going to end up. And then we've got a separate piece of software called Drawbridge that's going to provide the financial management solution. And currently we are bringing in integrators for the financial management solution and for the overall Salesforce solution to configure that. And then simultaneously, our IT staff is really challenged right now because we've got to keep the current system, the 20-plus-year-old system running, while they also learn the new platform and then learn how the ultimate goal is that our Move It staff, our motor vehicle IT staff, learn how to do those configurations so that they can maintain the system once the vendors walk away. And that is a work in progress. We are very cognizant that we will need IT talent to be able to maintain these systems going forward. And if we can't, then we'll have to look at some sort of solution and outsourcing. Where the legislature can help is recognizing that the state doesn't pay a competitive salary when it comes to any of our positions, whether that's IT, whether that's my frontline technicians, or basically across the board. And that's really where you guys can help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to thank you as well. I have the Sahara and McLeod DMV in my district, which we know is very busy. And so I actually had a data question as well. Are you able to list by DMV location the revenue? So which DMVs have the most revenue?
For the record, Angela Smith, I'm sure we could pull that information by location. I don't have it with me, but yes.
Okay. Do I have any other members that have a question for DMV? If not, I kind of have some follow-up questions. If I can have you guys turn back to page 16, this is the taxable gasoline for fiscal year 2022. I just want to make sure that I understand that. This is just on as you explained, was on the regular gasoline sales, which I think is at 23 cents per gallon, where there's a split between state and counties. And so the state portion of that gasoline tax collected last year would be $211 million. Am I understanding that chart correctly?
Michael Xavier for the record. Yes, that is correct.
And then at the bottom, we also have the jet aviation and aviation option taxes. Those listed there for fiscal year 2022. Do those revenue just merely go to the state?
Michael Xavier for the record. I believe those go back to the counties or to the airports if it's the jet and aviation side.
Thank you for that clarification. And then I know we also have the diesel fuel tax as well. I believe you had that set on your PowerPoint page 17. And I was also trying to make heads or tails of that. I know there's a variety of the diesel, the special, and in it, we have the county diesel option. I believe that's the portion that goes directly to the counties where the diesel gas is sold, and that's about $7 million. So would then the state revenue on that be $191 million? Is that how I'm understanding that chart?
Michael Xavier for the record. Yes, that's correct as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Director Butler and the rest of the Department of Motor Vehicles. Thank you for being here with us. I'm sorry we kept you a little late this evening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And so next we will go on to public comment. I'll first go to Las Vegas. It looks a little empty. I think everyone that was there has now vacated that building. And I'm not sure if there's anyone here in Carson City that wishes to make public comment. If there is, if you want to just stand up. Okay, it doesn't look like it. So last but not least, we will go to the telephone lines, VPS. Do we have anyone on the lines that wishes to make public comment this evening?
Chair, the public lines are open and working, but we have no callers.
Thank you so much. With that, we will end our Revenue Committee this evening, and I look forward to seeing everyone next Tuesday.